Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is the PPM market now supports strategic portfolio management. My name is Doug Welsby, and I'm also joined by my colleague, Paul Estabrooks. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature to submit questions. I'll address these during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I'll be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted to our YouTube channel. I'll now turn the presentation over to Paul.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you everyone for attending today. I'm going to walk through a few slides and then a couple of demos that we have prepared for today. So today's topic is strategic portfolio management. So we'll start with what is that? So I won't read all these slides, but essentially it is the organization of strategy as a portfolio, a set of objectives, a set of goals we're trying to achieve, and then how do we align those to our business processes, all of the organization structure, the teams and everything to try and drive to a common purpose. So that's what we're going to look at today is think of it as something that rides above a portfolio or a project management solution. So visually, we'll look at it this way. We set a strategy and out of that comes a set of objectives. We want to manage those objectives and that strategy as a portfolio. We may change priority. We may want to, add extra effort or focus on a certain component of it. We may need to react to something like a pandemic, for example, and adjust our strategy on the fly. Underneath that becomes obviously a set of projects and a portfolio of activities that are going to lead to a set of results or KPIs or accomplishments that ultimately lead to the completion or the achievement of the objective. So visually it looks like that: strategy at the top, and then down at the very bottom, the actual execution of the projects and activities and work that leads to the accomplishment of those objectives. So we look at sort of how this is evolving in the marketplace, and I've done this demo a few times with clients lately, and I keep hearing similar themes come about. That portfolio management or strategic portfolio management is that other layer of thinking that organizations are now doing, that way of structuring themselves and looking at why are we doing what we're doing, what's most important to us, and how are we realizing the benefit or the results that we had hoped to achieve. So we're seeing a lot of organizations move towards this organization. You can see the bullet point at the bottom around from Gartner that 50% of all people, of all organizations will be integrating this capability and this thinking into a much broader definition of work and how they measure it and how they accomplish their objectives as they go forward. So the impacts, I did a demo earlier today on this. So the idea of business transformation and how organizations are driving business transfer, digital transformation through their organization and what that means, and that alignment of strategy and the portfolio of their objectives to how they adapt their project management and drive out better, more value, quicker to market, more agile approach to everything that they do to get there quicker and adapt to the changing environments all around them, both competitively, economically, socially, and all the rest of it. So they have a broad range of objectives. Those objectives aren't necessarily strictly IT, they're organization-wide, and how does this all fit together? That's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of organizations adapt their PPMs or adapt their delivery approach to include this business transformation or this digital transformation as a key component of what they do going forward. So this drives to a change. So in the years that I've done PPM demos and so forth, it's always been with a project management office, and it's focused somewhat on the portfolio, but mostly on the project execution. Now those conversations are adapting. The definition of work is much broader. How we measure or track work is different than just strictly a project schedule. And how we align to that strategy and become part of that conversation about yielding value and improving things with the organization is much more closely aligned and much more monitored, much more controlled by the organization and looked at all the time. So we have to adjust to that. So the goal, what we're going to look at today is the use of OKRs as a method for doing that. And sort of a bit of background on this. We used to call this back in the 1970s, Intel had this management by objectives. Google embedded the concept of OKRs in their culture. We have it in our own company. And today we see organizations everywhere who have some form of an objective and key result, or a KPI, or something that they're measuring, and a set of objectives or goals that they're managing up at the top. So this common structure we see over and over again in all different industries that we work with. So a little bit of what is an OKR. The objective, obviously, sort of self-explanatory. It's what do you want to do? And the best practice is that you want to try and find 3 or so key results that tell you you've achieved that objective. And a key result is how do you know that you're getting somewhere? What are the things that would demonstrate to you that you're successful in accomplishing something? They have to be measurable. That's really important. It's got to be a percentage change, an actual numerical value change, a gain in something, whether it's market share or dollars or a reduction in cost or reduction in emissions or something of that nature, but very measurable. And when you're describing them, you want to focus on the outcome, not the activities that are going to take you to get there. The activities may yield to a situation where we can then measure the outcome. There's an important distinction there that we want to make sure we make. So focus on the outcomes. I like this quote: a healthy OKR environment strikes a balance between alignment and autonomy, common purpose, and creative latitude. And that is something you have to guard against. You do need to be careful that you do strike that overarching alignment, that we're all rowing the boat in one direction, we're all tied to something. Yet at the same time, the flexibility for a team or an organization to have some autonomy, to be able to react to a changing circumstance in their business unit, in their market, in their geography, and adjust to that accordingly. So common purpose is important, but creative latitude is vital as well. So striking that balance, and then you got to figure out what that is and make sure that you constantly monitor that. Additionally, you see this in clients we talk to, OKRs can have tiers, if you will. We'll see OKRs at the strategic level. So organizationally, we'll look at something and say, corporate-wide, these are our grand objectives for this year or this planning horizon, which might be multiple years. And then underneath that, there may be business units, geographies, departments, and so forth, possibly teams even underneath that have a set of objectives that align back to those corporate ones, but they're their take on it. They're their piece of it. If we do this, we will help the organization achieve that grand objective. And our cut in that is this little piece right here. So as you can see, sort of those graphics, the strategic, the tactical, the personal, or the portfolio sort of tree, as well as a possibility, a way of organizing that. The solution I'm going to demo in a few minutes supports all of that capability. So let's talk quickly about that solution. We have our product one plan, which we've built up to do a whole range of things related to project and portfolio management. And this particular session focuses on some new functionality that we've put in recently that helps organizations manage and report on their objectives and their key results. So I won't go through these slides in a great deal of detail, but this is what I'm going to show you in the demo, is how you can align those OKRs to your unique hierarchy, how you can provide progress or visibility into how they all fit together in a variety of different pivots. So I want to be able to look at it maybe by business unit, by objective, by geography, by owner, by whatever those different pivots might be, to understand where are we being successful, where do we need to put some extra attention and effort. I want to be able to track progress. I'll show you how you can do a status report here, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you might gain status information from other systems towards the end of the demo. You might want to look at this to see what the interdependencies are. So we'll show this particular board view that looks at how the different key results and underneath different objectives might actually be intertwined with each other. There might be codependency and what that might mean if one's slipping and the impact it could have elsewhere. And then obviously the ability using the Microsoft Power Platform, Power BI, to do rich reporting on your objectives and on your key results and see where are we doing well, where are we struggling, where do we need to provide some attention, and why. So without further ado, let's go do a demo. So I'm going to jump into my environment. Get rid of that. Down there for now. And we'll look at this right now and see, I'm looked at our OKR environment, and I want to make up this point very, very, very carefully, is that I am in Teams. I want to sort of drive home that attention. We've now put this solution to be inside Teams. You can come in here, click on and install this solution inside your Teams environment. And now I'm looking at my OKR implementation. So I'm just going to hide the Teams components for a while, just to give myself a bit more room. So here quickly, I could see in my dashboard, I have my list of objectives. If I needed to add a new one, I could come up here and say, I've got a new objective and type in what that is and start to create some information about it. Within each objective, I can capture specific information. So you can see there, there's a lead, there's a business unit, there's a type that this might map to, and other data, and this is all configurable. You can describe that however you need to. There is an objective description if you need to provide some additional data. It can have a budget if necessary, track a certain benefits target, start and end dates. This one obviously is most of the year, I guess 9 months. It can also have some prioritization too if you wanted to do that. And then ultimately, we can add in the key results that are going to map to it, and I'll spend a bit more time on those in a second. It has a status. That can be the accumulation of the statuses for the key results, obviously, but it also has this construct of a governance model. This allows us to provide sort of a living, breathing environment. It's not just that we create this so that we can run our reports for this reporting period, but we could simultaneously be looking at what are the objectives we might be planning for next year. We're now into early December. For many organizations, it's year end, and we're starting to plan for next year. We here at OnePlan are actually doing exactly that. So we have a list of proposed objectives for next year. We'll be honing in and finalizing that list, and we would turn those from proposed to active, because starting in January, they will be the objectives we're trying to accomplish. And then other objectives that we worked on this year may go to close. We're done those. We accomplished what we set out to do, and we've re-articulated that in a new objective going forward. So it has this life cycle of support to it, where I can be developing my next wave of things. I can be developing for the next quarter, the next year, the next planning horizon, while managing the active ones. And then obviously, when we're done and completing one, marking it as closed and moving it out of the way. So that's my objectives. Underneath these objectives, you'll see, as I showed in one, there are a set of key results. And if I go pick on a key result here, I'm just going to grab this one quickly. It too has a page of information about it. It has a lead. It has what objective it's tied to. It has obviously a name, what business unit it has, what priority it is in and of itself, and then some key results and metrics that are related to it. What kind of a metric is it? This one is a numerical. We're trying to get to 20 customer interviews. We're currently at 17, and we can describe why this is so important. It also has that same concept of a life cycle. That life cycle might be a quarterly one. At the end of this quarter, we're going to reevaluate and say, now we want to interview 20 more next quarter, or let's up it to 25. Let's stretch a bit. So that life cycle may evolve very much more quickly. It can also have a work plan, because the key result in and of itself has to be accomplished by doing something. So perhaps what we want to then do is tie that key result to a set of tasks or activities. Here we've got a list of tasks. We even have people assigned to them. So to do the customer interviews, we need to book those interviews. We need to capture, the questions we want to ask them, the survey we want to do. We need to do that. We need to collate the results and so forth. Okay. Say thank you, all the rest of it. We may want to manage that. If we do, maybe in Project Professional or Project for the Web or Planner or some other tool, or right here natively, we can support that idea of this particular key result requires us to do a bunch of work in a project. That project may be small, maybe very quick, something that Planner would handle well, or something very complex, like the implementation of a new piece of software or a new module within our financial system, or the implementation of a whole new production line or some other change, that there's a whole lot of work there. And the results of the objective will be once we complete that work and we measure it. And then lastly, we can do some reporting on this. So here, we can do the status report natively right here in the tool. I've got 17 interviews done, so I'm on track, I'm at 85%. And you can see we have a history of all these status reports we've done as we progress through this project, through this year, of how we are progressing against this number. Jump back to an older one, the number was a little less, one less in this case. Okay, we're proceeding nicely. Now we got to get 3 done the next 3 weeks. So obviously we're on track, but we've got work to do to complete this by the end of the year. So we can provide that status report. Most common question I get in doing this demo with customers is, well, could you tie this status report into something? I'll cover that in a bit more later, but the short answer is most likely yes. If you have a system that's already tracking these statistics, we're keen to look at how we might go and get it, and we'll talk about a couple of methods. So now as I jump back to this home page, I did want to show a couple of other types of views. I showed you this particular view, but I could look at this by key results status. So I could turn this around and see these are all of our on target ones. These are our at risk and off risk, a very interactive dashboard. Well, why are these off target? What are we doing about it? We might want to dig into the status report. I could look at these by, by BU. So how is each business unit completing theirs? IT's only got 4, but 2 of them are at risk. Product development's got a couple that are actually off track, and so forth. We could dig into it that way. As I showed in the slides, here's that exact board view from the slide. The idea that I can organize my column is my objectives. The color coding is the current status of that particular one. These strings that you see are telling me that there's a certain relationship between these different objectives, and where you see red, obviously the one that is a precursor to the other one is not doing so well, and that may have a downstream impact here. We should watch that. Lastly, I might want to look at this in a roadmap view. Here I'm looking at it by business unit, and I could see how these different activities with their own start and end dates, how they interrelate to each other. And again, the color coding tells me which ones are in trouble and what that might mean, as well as which ones are doing fine, which are green. So very rich different ways of viewing that report, that information in a list, a board, or a roadmap. And then lastly, we can go and look at it in Power BI. How are we proceeding in each of these objectives? Here's my overall portfolio. Maybe I want to look at it in a specific summary of one of them. So I'm looking at improved customer success and so forth. Maybe I want to see it by business unit. Okay, where am I on track and off track? And I like these ones. How are we doing on my key results themselves? You can see where we got great progress and where we're at less progress. And then in a nice, very easily consumable bar chart with color coding, you could see where we're progressing all the way down to the bottom 2, which we haven't even taken action on. Perhaps there's a reason why, but I certainly want to know. So just to summarize, the idea here is to give an organization the ability to articulate their objectives, figure out and define what are the key results that need to map to those objectives, and then provide the various players involved in that a place to go and status those key results, and to visualize quickly where are we, which of the 2 objectives on here, one's at risk and one's off track. What are we doing about that? Who do we ask about that? Who's accountable, and how are they handling that? What is the status of that? What are they doing to get back on track? Or what other effort or investment do we need to make to get them there? So that's a very simple construct there. Again, it can have multiple layers, and I'm going to show in a second demo on an additional layer. But you can see here, pretty flat, objective and key result. But we could layer that to be strategic or corporate objectives, department, and so forth, and provide that additional layers. And you'll see that in the second demo here in a minute, where we've done a bit of that as a pivot on this idea. I'll jump back to my slide deck for a second and step forward. I wanted to cover a second concept. A couple of things before I do that. I showed you our one plan solution built into Teams, and you did see a bit of Power BI. In the background, we can be using Power Automate to interact with Planner or Project for the Web or to some other business system. But we can also extend this platform with a Power App. Maybe we need a Power App to go and do benefits tracking against the results of a project so that we can actually confirm that the key result we were seeking has been achieved, because doing the project set us up to realize the results. So now I might create a Power App to provide the business, the owner of that project, with the ability to go and track that benefit through to completion over a 6-month period or what have you, so that I can say, yes, we achieved the objective because the results of the project were what we thought they would be, and we've accomplished what we set out to do. And that's a check mark or a success for that objective. That's a great example where we might use a Power App to extend the platform and reach into and help the business get there and consolidate this information and have that common purpose and that common source of truth. In other cases, we have in the background our one connect solution to do connections to systems. And I get asked this a lot when I talk to clients about this solution is, can we get to your financial system, to a production system, to a sales management system? And the answer is yes. We built this platform to be able to do those very, very deep, rich integration points so that we can drive forward with more data and maybe not require someone to go into a status report in one plan where the status or the data that would drive that result or that calculation is already being created in another. So we can tie those two worlds together. Oh, sorry. The next thing I want to cover off is this is a different pivot on that same OKR. And it's a demo we built, and that's why I thought I'd include it in this webinar. We see this, I was introduced to this a few months ago, this idea of environment, social, and governance reporting. It's a common set of reporting that organizations are now doing as part of their regular financial reporting to the street and to the stock markets around what are they doing around environment criteria around reduction of greenhouse gases, reduction of carbon emissions, and so forth. What are they doing socially with respect to their employees and so forth, and how they interact with their communities that are around them, and what are they doing from a governance perspective in terms of leadership and all kinds of controls and shareholder rights. So you'll see this growing trend of ESG reporting. And I grabbed a few different ones on both sides of the border in Canada and the US, TD Bank here in Canada, ArcelorMittal, which is a global steel company, and obviously Starbucks. And that Starbucks screenshot is actually from Yahoo Finance and how it rates its ESG reporting and ESG scoring. And then I grabbed another one. What does Microsoft do? According to the source Motley Fool, they're actually one of the best in the world at doing ESG reporting. This is a very common thing, and it follows a similar pattern of setting a set of objectives, measuring and looking for key results, and being able to report on those. So it's an interesting pivot on this OKR solution. So we created a demo, and I grabbed Nutrient's ESG report from 2020 and used that as my inspiration. Some of the things that are in there, so it has lots to do with carbon emission control and safety and so forth. Nutrient, for those of you who don't know, is the world's largest fertilizer company. They're a merger of two companies in North America, and they do have operations worldwide, so you'll see some of that. So I'm going to do a quick demo of that solution, just as a different example of how this works. So here we go. I have my back into my one plan environment, but you'll see it's a slightly different pivot. And as I mentioned a minute ago, my ESG now has a third level, so I've built this out to be a bit broader. So I have in here my environment, my objectives, my social objectives, and my governance objectives. And underneath each of those objectives, I have my key results. What is it that I'm going to do that's going to hit this create client opportunities objective? And this was something that was in their annual report. So I made up some of what I thought might be good key objectives. That leads to my overall environment reporting. So it is these objectives that drive out my environment program that I'm reporting on for 2020 or 2021, as the case may be. And if I pick on one of these that I chose, this one sort of made a lot of sense with COVID, but the same idea, if I jump back here, is in my details. Again, I have that same idea of being able to propose a set of objectives or key results, render them active once we agree on that that's what we're going to work on, and then ultimately close them as we complete them. So in this particular example, we were going to do these mixed farming initiatives with some of our clients. Our goal was to do 10. We're currently at 3. We're nearing the end of the year. And so just to sort of wrap up this piece of that demo, is I put in this to say that we had to postpone this mostly because of COVID, as could anyone imagine. And so that's our status reporting on this particular scenario. So that made some sense that might be what might happen there. So we're going to slow that one down, and we'll have to pick it up again when the coast is clear. So quickly, this was a different pivot on that same concept of OKR. I wanted to add a different layer. I wanted to kind of give it a different sort of industry spin. That's something that organizations do every day, and that is their ESG reporting and how they govern this. Obviously, for a lot of these, if you're doing water management or emissions and so forth, you'd look to try and tie this into that system in the back end where that data is being tracked and captured and monitored, so that we have a common understanding of what success means. There is a system that's monitoring that. We know what that means. We know what an emission means. We know what it looks like. We want to be able to leverage that data so that when we say we're off track or we're on track, it's because we're referencing and using the actual information that relates to that. We're not making up our own. This isn't an opinion. It is an actual statistical fact or what have you. It's a quantifiable thing, and we all agree on the dimensions of that. So now I'll close with a couple of final slides here just quickly. If you're interested in what you've seen, if you go to Microsoft App Source and search on One Plan or Strategic Portfolio Management, this solution will come up. You can click on free trial and stand up a trial. With our trials, you can actually load sample data. The sample data you would load is the data I showed in that first demo, so you'd be able to play with that, explore around, look at that. Feel free to reach out to us to get ideas on, well, could I do this or how would I do that? How would you go about some of these things like tying into data elsewhere or adding additional layers to the model? It's from just the two that are in the demo. That wraps up our webinar. If you have any more questions, you can reach out at oneplan.ai to our website. Contact us at oneplan.ai if you have questions, or you can reach me personally. I appreciate all of your time today. Hopefully this has been very beneficial.